Mm. So hello, I'm Dottie Kuntz. I'm the leader of the IONS Community Group, Vancouver IONS Community Group. And our speaker tonight is Georgena Grace. She's one of our members, so we're very happy to have her here. Georgena was trained originally in the Rubenfeld Body and Energy Practitioner. Is that right, Georgena? And she went through her own grief process. For many years, she had to process the grief of her son and brother both passing from suicide, and two other family members, all within less than a 4-year period. And from that, she gained a lot of wisdom that she wants to share with other people. In the process, she became certified as a mind-body therapist, and to use the body's intelligence to heal our emotional trauma and grief. So Georgena, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dottie, and welcome everyone. Thank you for the gift of your time and your presence tonight. Because last month, Paul Levy reminded us that we are at a time unlike any in history, and he stated propaganda is everywhere. The powers that be do not have our best interests at heart, and the source of what's destroying us is embedded in the psyche. Watiko is a disease of the soul that feeds off fear. So the question for us tonight is, how do we awaken from this collective dream of fear and separation? Well, by remembering the truth of who we are. That was one of the questions that Paul said. It came up at the end of Paul's presentation, is how do we know who we are? And that was the impetus for much of what I pulled together for tonight. Because when we ask, who am I in truth? What am I? What am I in truth? How do I serve? How do I serve in truth? There are many different ways to answer those questions. One is to move from our intellect into our intuition, to move from our small egoic self into our embodied self, to move from the fear of Watiko into the freedom of being the truth of our being, and moving from reaction into response. So we are integrating mind, body, emotion, and essence as we explore tonight's topic. Now, tonight's program is based on the teachings of 3 different people. One is mind-body pioneer Alana Rubenfeld, and she is the founder and creator of the Rubenfeld Synergy Method. Alana died in 2022, December 23rd, as a matter of fact, in Medford, Oregon. And our community really did feel the energetic departure, because she was such a wonderful force and made such an impact on all of us. And Alana put together a synergistic program with the elements of touch, curiosity, humor, and metaphoric messages that live in the body. And each of those then support us in accessing the wisdom within. And then the second person that's a great influence in tonight's program is the philosopher Ernest Holmes. And he began teaching that we're a reflection of one another, that what we see in our life outside is a reflection of what's happening inside. And he began these teachings in California, and people were drawn to him because he was too able to integrate many different teachings and ways of being. And he created a movement called religious science that then became science of mind and is now an international denomination called Centers for Spiritual Living, and that is based in Golden, Colorado. And the thing that I love about Ernest that really, really fits into our program tonight is he will say, in this moment, is this happening to me, or is this happening for me? And when we even stop and think about that, the to me puts us in a place of victim, and the for me puts us in a place of growth and expansion, even though it may be something we really feel that's crappy that's happening to us. So the third person, or actually, yes, the third person is beyond a person. I don't know. I'm very curious. I see most of your cameras off, so I won't ask you to raise your hands, but later we can. How many of you have heard of Paul Selig? He's a channel, and he began channeling a series of books back in 2010. The very first one is I Am the Word. And Paul is a channel for the Melchizedek group. And the books now, his last one came out in 2023, and it's called Innocence, taking us back to our childlike innocence and wonder. And I'm hoping that you'll join me doing that throughout tonight's program. One of the things that happens with Paul's work is the discussion of consciousness as the metaphysical concept of the upper room. And those of us that were raised in the Christian tradition will remember on the night of the Last Supper, Jesus took his disciples into the upper room. Well, it was a place of high consciousness. And when we are in that state of response, in the present moment, we can see things differently. We can say, behold, I see all things new. Behold, I make all things new. And the tool from Paul's group that I really appreciate so very much is the attunements, sound as medicine. And I didn't say that the primary tool that Ernest taught us is affirmative prayer. And that's where the spiritual practitioner goes into knowing that the divine plan for this universe and all those beyond is perfection. And when there is a condition of worry, doubt, fear, lack, limitation, dis-ease of any kind, those windows of consciousness need to be washed clear and clean. Well, when you're in it, it's really, really hard to do that. So the practitioner with affirmative prayer takes us up to that upper room, that higher place of consciousness. So I know as a group here at IONS, we're simply used to listening, to learning, and leaving with new awarenesses. Well, tonight I'm going to invite you to respond in the chat from time to time. And may we all agree, we're a small group, that the only information shared about this event is your own. So that means what's written in the chat stays in the chat. And that, you know, you may see something somebody's written and think, oh, that was brilliant. Why didn't I do that? Well, to compare is to despair. I finally learned that. I'm finally living that. And it's a great place to bring myself back from that place of comparison and confusion and worry and doubt and say, oh yeah, I'm just in this place right here and right now. So the intention of our gathering tonight is simply to practice being present in your body, present to each aspect of yourself that you experience tonight as you're listening and learning and discovering, and present to each other in this circle, and present as a divine embodied being, no matter what is happening. That is the truth of who we are. When we ask the question, who am I? That is the truth of our being. A divine embodied being is what we are. We know universe and spirit created each of us here tonight. An infinite intelligence beats our hearts in this very moment as the earth around us keeps spinning on in space. And you each have your own word or phrase for the infinite. So when I use a word, God, spirit, divine, just put your own word in. Make that translation so that loving presence is not lost in translation. So now let's be present to one another. And I'm very curious, how did you discover ions? My friend, Edie Allen, introduced me to Dottie Kuntz. And it was Dottie who introduced me to ions. And what keeps me coming back is my love of learning about this art and science of consciousness. So I'm going to invite you, if you choose, to share in the chat how you discovered ions. And just make a little note right in there and what keeps you coming back. So you can just take a minute to do that now. The chat is located at the bottom of your screen. On mine, there's a bar with our participants. And then right to the right of it is chat, and it looks like a conversation, I guess, symbol that you would see in a comic strip. So when you click on that, that's where you can then write, how did you discover ions and what keeps you coming back? So I'll write mine. Mine is easy. Dottie Kuntz is the way I discovered ions. And what keeps me coming back is my love of learning about consciousness. And I'm just going to put a capital C for consciousness. And Dottie, I just spelled your name right. So there we have it. Oh, okay. So Kena says, I met Teresa Bright at an energy healing retreat in San Francisco many years ago. And she coordinates the PDX ions, and I returned because I love the mysteries of life. Oh, yes, and consciousness is quite the mystery. So thank you, Kena. And Victoria, through a friend, Marcy, I think, and then through a client I had who was a presenter at an IONS event, and then being in a Be Present group together. Yay. I think probably, Victoria, you should be the one presenting tonight with this Be Present, because that's what this all is all about. And I love the learning. Okay. So we'll wait a minute more. And Darlene, if it's easier for you to unmute and just share if you wish, you may certainly do that. And Claire says, a friend brought me to my first IONS meeting where you met Dottie. Hey, it's a small world here, isn't it? So that's fantastic. Good. And the reason I was curious about that is IONS is that mystical, noetic experience. And we're going to just unpack a couple of noetic experiences now, because the quality of the noetic experience brings us into the present moment. And it's those qualities that are the qualities of healthy response. So I'm going to ask you this question now, and thank everyone for their response. The next question, or the next relationship we're going to explore, is with your body, being present in the moment as you recall an experience. So how many times have you heard the story of Edgar Mitchell's noetic experience? So I invite you to close your eyes or cast them down and just notice what happens in your body, particularly in your heart, your gut, and your head as you hear this story now. Hurtling through space in February of 1971 in Apollo 14, Edgar Mitchell had a camera. It was a gift from NASA. And looking out the window, back at the Earth beneath him, from an out-of-this-world perspective, he saw a beautiful blue marble floating in the dark space. And seeing this, the blue ocean striped with white clouds, he snapped a photo of his home, this expansive planet Earth. And he experienced an instant of global consciousness, a people orientation, a oneness. So what are you noticing in this moment in your body as you recall this image of planet Earth, that beautiful blue marble seen from space? Perhaps your recall is one of beauty or grandeur or mystical oneness or all of those. We are not separate from this image. It is a reflection of the beauty, the grandeur, the out of this worldness within each of us. So you may open your eyes now. And what we know is, let me see. Okay, that's good. So what we know is this event shifted Mitchell's consciousness. The next year, he retired from NASA and the US Navy. And immediately, he founded Edgar D. Mitchell and Associates of Monterey, California, a commercial organization promoting ecologically pure products and services designed to alleviate planetary problems. Because even back in the 70s, there were so many. Mitchell said, you develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. So after this noetic experience, he co-founded IONS then the following year in 1973. So what I'm going to invite you to do is once again, go back in your body or simply pause in this moment and just be with your own recollection of a noetic experience. And knowing this group, we could probably just turn off the recording and talk about our noetic experiences for the rest of the evening, because undoubtedly you've had so many. But just pick one. And perhaps it occurred with Indigenous people during a retreat, experiencing the grandiosity of nature or the sacred intimate encounter with another. Or maybe even when a lightning bolt of awareness coursed through your body with your own ahas, a really bold discernment that you needed to make a change in your life. So I invite you now to simply pause and recall that experience for the next moment. Actually, minute. And now from that place, that experience, I invite you to take your awareness to your feet. And I'm curious, can you really feel them on the floor? Or does it feel like with this noetic experience, you left your body? You can't get it wrong simply because it's your experience. It's your response to the invitation to recall and re-experience something that was profound in your life. And maybe one foot feels bigger, wider, longer, heavier than the other. And now bring your awareness up from the floor to your hips. And just notice how your hips are contacting the chair. Makes a difference if you have your legs crossed. I have mine crossed. So my right leg is over my left leg. So my right hip is up in the air just a little bit. But the noetic experience is going on in my chest. That feeling still lingers there. And now bring your awareness up your back, your lower back. And just notice if there's a tightness or an expansion in your back itself as you go back into this experience. And then bring your awareness around, please, to the front of your body, to your stomach, and just notice what's happening there. Was it involved in the noetic experience? And finally, move up into your chest and your shoulders. And did this noetic experience allow you to stop shouldering something and step into a new expanded version of yourself? And finally, come up to your neck and your head. And I invite you now to come back into the room and share briefly in the chat this event. And because we're a small group, we get to choose. Do we want to turn off our microphones and share? Is that easier for you? I'm certainly not attached to I see heads nodding. Okay, so let's do that. And what we'll share is where the event occurred, when the event occurred, and then what words describe your experience of it. So, Claire, you shook your head first. Will you just share what your experience was, please?
Thank you. I'm not a very good typist, so.
Good. Let's make this easy, okay?
And I'm not quite sure what a noetic experience is, so I'm just gonna wing it here.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
It was several years ago, and it was in somewhere in New Mexico, and it was with a group of Indigenous Native American elders around a bonfire. And there was an Acoma leader who, I think he was their chief, who spoke about his relationship with the earth. And I could feel such a kinship with him and such an awakening of, oh, yes, that's who she is. That's who she is.
That's a noetic experience.
All right.
Yeah. So, Victoria, what about you? Thanks, Claire, so much.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Claire. Well, the experience that came to mind was a recent one that I had actually at a Be Present conference. And it was just I don't know, little one, but we were being led in, what's it called? Is it sacred chanting? Some monastic, I can't remember if it was that or, yeah, I think it was that. And we were advised that just to notice, notice what was happening in our minds. And if a thought came, just kind of put it on a boat and let it go. And the whole point, I may be putting a lot of things together anyway. And then when we wanted to let to remind us to come back to the stillness or come back to the presence, then we were to say this word. And before the instructions, I was thinking I'll say beloved, but then they said a one syllable word is better. And the word that came was home. And that was just, and it was like the om sound, and the welcome home. So it was really, and it's the whole sense of being home was really precious. So I would say that's a recent experience that feels like it was expansive and
Yes.
well, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yes. Oh, okay. Kana?
Oh, let's see. Oh.
Oh, that's neat. Oh, do you want to share?
Are you talking to me?
Uh-huh. Yes.
And as you mentioned earlier, we could probably spend the rest of the evening sharing these stories. And I was trying to, so I'm just going to go back to the very first one that I had. I was in high school, and my senior art project was painting for a clothing store. I was doing a painting on their window, and it was my senior art project. So it was during school, and I got to skip school to do this project. So that was fun. Anyway, and it was on glass, so I was having to paint backwards. So I had to put all the detail first and then the shadows. And so I was doing it backwards. So it was very, it was very involved and took a lot of mental effort. So I was deeply, deeply into that. And I was sitting in it was like a bar stool with a back on it. And I was just painting. And then if anybody has seen the movie Ghost, and at that moment where Whoopi gets where he comes into her and her dress goes whoosh, that happened to me. I didn't have a dress on, but it happened in my body. And I suddenly, it was my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend, of course, the first love of my life. And he came to mind, and that hit me. And I suddenly turned around and looked at the clock for some reason. It was like 4:20. And I just kind of sat there and tried to process it. I had no idea what it was all about. His presence was just immediately there. So a couple of days later, I saw him, and he said, let's go get a Coke. And so we did. And he said, and I didn't mention any of this because I didn't know what to process. I didn't know what to think of it. And he said, no, I did mention it. I said, I had something strange happen to me last week. And he said, was it Tuesday? And I said, yes. He says, was it 4:20? I said, yes. And he said, get emotional. So he said, I needed you so badly. Anyway, I got it. That's it.
Wow.
This is why I don't speak. I have the gift of tears.
Thank you.
People get chills. I get tears.
We love it. Thank you so much. And I hope I live long enough, Kana, so that we never ever apologize for our tears in our culture. So thank you for being here and sharing that. Yeah.
I'm cutting my face off. There we go.
Okay. There you go. Okay, good. Good. Dottie, this is, see, isn't this rich?
Yes.
Dottie?
I've had several. So, the one that came to mind, the first was back in 1994. I was in Egypt, And
Mm.
this particular day, I was like in an altered state. And at lunchtime, we were eating, there was a 269 people on this spiritual trip to Egypt. And we were having lunch, yeah, I know, a buffet lunch on the lawn at a hotel, as you know, as part of our tour for the day. And I was just walking across the lawn with my plate, and it was like this bolt of lightning kind of hit me in my body. But so I was in an altered state, so I wasn't really in my body. I mean, it was like, you know, I was out here. And I just knew in my bones. It was like I could feel the whole world. And I just knew in that moment that everybody was where they were supposed to be, doing what they were supposed to be doing at that moment, you know, for their lives. And that didn't mean that the next minute it doesn't become something else, or wouldn't be better if it was something else or whatever. But at that moment, everything was perfect. And it was just like I knew it in my bones.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh,
I
that's
guess my body was
phenomenal.
involved. It was a
Oh, that's
body, yeah, it was a body
yeah.
experience. Yeah.
Wow. That's phenomenal. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. And my experience was when I was 16, the first time it happened. And I was in Banff, Canada, and had taken the chairlift up and was sitting there looking out over the lake and the mountains. And I saw the grandeur and the awe, and I knew that I was one with all of it. And it was it was kind of an out of body expansive, and yet I can still feel how I was sitting, and it was cold underneath me there. And so, but listen to the words that we use. I needed you. There was that connection. Home. And see, Paul Selig has us chanting, Victoria, I have come, I have come, I have come. And that M sound is something we may have time to do tonight to get into our bodies as a centering. But that word, to take, I have come home, is how I'm going to expand it. So thank you for the gift to me tonight. That was really lovely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Claire, here you were. You knew. You knew. And it's interesting to me that it was the sound for you, Claire, and the drumming and the fire, those elements in the earth that got you into that state of noetic. And for you, Victoria, what I heard, and correct me if I don't get it, but you were also in a chanting place.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And here's Kana trying to paint backwards. Thank heaven she was sitting on that bar stool with that big whoosh of awareness. And Dottie, you were already out of your body. We heard that, you know? So I simply wanted to invite you to come back to an experience like that because of the qualities of it. You see, when we're in a state of reaction, we're in that state of fear, and the qualities are very different than the state of being home, than the state of connection with the earth and knowing we're part of all that is, and that everybody's in the right place at the right time in this moment. And guess what? That's the only moment we have. So Darlene or Nancy, feel free anytime to jump in when we have another response. Would love to hear from you. And thank you all so very much. Okay. Oh, Darlene, do you have something you'd like to share with us?
I think mine are not like that so much as, but I have experience when I've been out and in the desert and looking up at the stars, and you just feel the connection. You just feel it. It embodies you, and you feel it one with the planet.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. And while I still have you on screen, I'm curious, did everybody know what I was talking about when I did the image of the blue marble that you've seen, the picture of Earth from space? Okay. Okay, that's good. I loved what Paul did last month so much that I decided not to do any slides. And that would have been probably the first slide I would have done. So thank you so much. So I'm watching the time here, and this is going to be fun. I have timed this several times. I'm not going to run out of things to say with all of you here. It's so wonderful. So I spoke with my friend Edie Allen today, and once again, she shared this phrase she loves to share with me. Keep what is worth keeping, and with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. And that's by Diane Marie Crike. And so I invite you to do that for tonight. The next person we're going to talk about is Alana Rubenfeld. And I studied with her for 4 years. And what happened to me is I became very aware that I was riding my body like a horse, that my head was doing all of the moving forward, and that there was this whole big body that from time to time had grown fibroids in my throat, in my here, in my this and that. And I was constantly having surgery to take these toxic sacs out because I wasn't listening to my body. Well, Alana's method is based on harmonics and vibrations, and she taught us to work through our hands to listen to our clients while we were incorporating emotional processing and verbal interventions. Well, of course, in 2020, that all went away, and this work was able to be shifted online. And so what happened is that we learned in our training, and I can do this now online with people, that we can go into the body because it holds emotional memory in its cells. Look what happened with each of you. You remembered what happened. Quantum mechanics explains that we are all vibrational fields. And this methodology, the synergy method, allows change to occur, both in the intellectual understanding as well as the body's felt experiences via shifts in energy. And Alana went on to, she had trained with Charlotte Silver in the sensory awareness technique, Judith Leibowitz with the FM Alexander technique. She worked directly and trained directly with Moshe Feldenkrais in the Feldenkrais method. And she was at Esalen with Fritz and Laura Pearl's learning Gestalt therapy. And it was pretty cool because Fritz, he could never even say Alana's name right. But one day he said, Ilana, come up into the circle where the hot seat is and start touching this person as I work with them in the hot seat. And so the talk and touch of Rubenfeld Synergy was born in that moment. So it was really neat. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invite you to explore your own energy field with a vibration of curiosity and willingness, simply because this may be something you haven't done before. I've never done it before I met Alana. And what we're going to do, I'm watching the time because there's several processes I really want us to get to that allow us to respond instead of react. This brings you in connection with your energy field in this moment. And of course, we know that there is the field all around us and that our aura stretches out as far as our fingertips and far as we can go above our head. And it changes with our mood. It changes with the condition of our body. But tonight, let's go in and get in deep contact with that aspect of ourselves, because when we can come from that place of centered knowingness of who we are, we're not going to be jolted off center as likely when we're in that place where we feel like we want to react. We can come from center and respond. So I'm going to invite you to rub your hands together with your fingers pointed out into the room and just sit very comfortably. And now shake out your hands and then float your hands up in the air with your palms facing once again outward, as if you have an accordion between your hands. And I'm going to invite you to just notice the space between your hands right now and slowly move your palms out, farther away, and now move your palms closer, as if you're playing that accordion. And just listen to what's happening in the space between your hands. And Kana, for you, you may simply notice what happens in your hands more intently with each brush stroke, if you choose, or each placement of tissue on the page. So moving your hands in and out, people will experience different ways of feeling this energy field. There may be a temperature between your hands. There may be a texture. There may even be a color. Once again, you can't get it wrong. Just notice the difference. Does the space change as your hands come closer together? And then as you move them farther apart. And notice what you're feeling in your body. Is there a little bit of hypervigilance there? Is there a little bit of tension in your shoulders because you're holding your hands up out in front of you? Just put your hands down now and just shake them out. Just shake, 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 shake them out. And now this time, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and rub your hands together again with your fingers pointing out, just as if you're starting a fire. And this time now, shake them out and then float your hands so your palms are the height of your face. So the palms themselves are really centered on your eyes. And I'm going to invite you to bring your palms now close to your face and just stop maybe an inch or so in front of your face. And then move your hands up and move your hands down. And did you feel energy moving in your hands? Or perhaps did your face have a different sensation as your hands were moving up and down? Once again, there's no right way or wrong way to experience this. Just be in the present moment, please. And now I'm going to invite you to bring your hands to touch your face. And you may touch your eyes. I'm wearing glasses, so I am putting my hands on both sides of my face. I love to have people greet me this way when I know them very well. And now bring your hands up to touch your forehead. And just notice what the skin is like on your forehead. What does it feel like? And how many fingers want to touch your forehead? And then bring your hands down to your temples. And notice if your fingers, mine have come in, like they're scrunched up together so that they can be in this space. And then move your hands down now to your cheeks. And then all the way down to your chin. And now let your hands, your fingertips, feel your mouth. And then your nose. And finally your eyes. And very often Alana says this is the first time people really feel like they've connected with themselves. It's very different, isn't it? So now in this moment, I invite you to exhale. And then just take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly move your hands away from your face. And now shift them around to the back of your head. Because how often do you touch the back of your head? Maybe when you're trying to get your hair to behave, but probably not very often. And just notice now, as you bring your hands from your neck up, noticing different parts of the back of your head. And what does it feel like to make contact? To come home to yourself, as we say so often, Victoria, in Rubenfeld's energy, by touching the back of your head. When was the last time you had the privilege of holding a baby and one of your hands was cradling the back of their head? A very intimate experience where we can convey love in that present moment, not only to the baby, but coming back here to ourselves. And now you may float your hands down. And so as this experience comes to a close, I'm going to invite you to just notice by holding up your hand Kana, there's a little thing at the bottom called reactions, and you may just raise your hand. And iPhone, you may do the same. Raise your hand as a yes, or thumbs down as a no. Darlene, you may too. Was this a unique experience for you? Was this something you'd never done before? So if it was something unique to you, give me a thumbs up. Or if it's something you've already done, just go like this. Okay, so you'd already done it. Okay, got it. Thank you so much. All right. I just wanted you to experience the energy of that. Okay. So at this point, you may ask, well, Georgena, when are we going to get into the topic of reaction versus response? Well, presence is the power to be in response instead of reaction. And reaction is almost always has its foundation in fear. Remember when Paul talked last time, he talked about Wetiko being a virus, a fear virus. Well, what is a virus? It's an infective agent that typically consists of a nucleic acid molecule in a protein coat and is too small to be seen. And yet, what happens? How do you treat a virus when you get it? You Google it and it says, oh, rest and drink plenty of fluids. And why? Because your body knows how to heal itself. So tonight, the title of our gathering is React or Respond, Your Body Knows the Way. And you have been present to yourself these past 47 minutes. You've been present to the retelling of Edgar Mitchell's noetic experience. You've been present to your own re-experiencing of your noetic experience. And you've been present to recalling this. What was it like for you to touch yourself? So I'm going to ask you a silly question. What state are you in right now? Some of you are in California, some of you are in Oregon, some of you are in Washington. But what I mean is, what energetic state are you in right now? And I'm curious, if you want, just unmute for a minute and tell me what state you're in. Maybe you're in a state of confusion, saying, this isn't the time what I thought I was going to get. What state are you in? I'm curious.
Relaxed.
Relaxed. Okay. Victoria.
Yeah, just peaceful.
Peaceful. Claire.
Calm.
Calm. Oh my goodness, I think we've got a theme going on here. Don't worry, Darlene, if you don't want to unmute and share, I think we've got this state of peacefulness going on. Yeah, yeah. And so that is the state, that centeredness, stableness, peacefulness, relaxed calmness is that state that we can then respond from, more centered. And I keep using the word centered. I used to use the word ground until a Native American woman in the Rubenfeld Synergy community said to me, "Oh, Georgena, we don't like the word grounded because we were ground into the ground. We lost our ground." And so I simply share that as an aha that I had. My clients who are people grieving so often don't feel shattered, but their languaging has changed. Instead of talking about safety and security, they're talking about stability. And so, Victoria, I love that word home, because how often when we come home do we feel this place that provides a sense of safety, security, stability. I'm back home with myself. I'm back home in this place that I call home. And so what I know is we are hurt in relationship and we heal in relationship. And so now the next relationship we're going to explore is that relationship with your body. And this is one of the processes that I teach now that I'm certifying people to do what I do in the Somatic Grief Relief Certification Program. It's also something I do with clients, and it doesn't matter what state they're in. When we really listen deeply to the body, there's wisdom there and discernment. So what I'm going to share with you right now is I am going to share a process where we are going to recognize, relate, and release aches, pains, sensations, messages that we have in the body. And this is the way it's going to go. I'm going to invite you to rub your hands together after you've closed your eyes. And then I'm going to invite you to find a place in your body where you're feeling an ache, a pain, or a sensation, and ask your body if you can touch it. Now, this may seem really strange, but sometimes underneath all of that, we don't want to be touched when we're in great pain. And it was so funny tonight because I realized that this audience is an older audience. And so right now, many of us have aches and pains, and we don't want to be in our bodies because it's too hard to be there right now. But I'm going to invite you to be childlike, to be innocent and curious. So I had a couple come into my office I'll never forget it, in July of 2016. And at that time, I was working in a place that had a couch. And they came and they sat on the couch, and I was in a chair facing them. And the reason they came was because they'd just been married less than 90 days. And while they were on their honeymoon, they got a call that the groom's father had been taken ill and was in the ICU. So they rushed home from their honeymoon, and he died shortly after their return. So here they were, awash in grief. He was missing his dad. He was missing his dad getting to know his new wife and seeing the life that they were going to create together. She was missing her father-in-law because she hadn't known him that much at all. And she was in a state of wanting to comfort her new husband. So I invited them to do the process. Rub your hands together after you've closed your eyes and float your hand to a place in your body that's calling for attention. Well, guess what? That man floated his hand to his left shoulder. And that happens to be my grief shoulder. So I watched her and I watched him and I honed in on him. And I said, what are you noticing in the space beneath your hands? And he said, the color red. And I had led him through, as you will. And that's what came out. And I said, so as you're with the color red, are you noticing an image? And he paused like I am. And he said, yes, it's morphing into a red cross, just like the red cross on the door of the ICU where my father died. So in this method, I repeat exactly what a person says, because how often are each of you who are so wise unaware of the wisdom you're saying? You just are out there connecting with the person in front of you, but what you're saying is profound. So in the Rubenfeld synergy method, we repeat everything that people say. So I repeated that to him, and then I said, does this red cross have a message? And sure enough, it did. And the message was, you're going to be okay. And so now I'm going to take you into this process right now, simply because this is a resource that you may leave with. And I recently was at a business, and there were 8 people in the room. 6 people had profound experiences where they got guidance. 1 fell asleep, and 1 of them got nothing. So I am not attached to this. The only thing I'm going to do is be present and allow you to move through this process. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes or cast them down. Put your feet on the floor, and in this moment, scan your body. And notice if there's a place in your body that's calling for attention, as an ache, as a pain, as a sensation. And check in with that place in your body and ask it if you have permission to touch it. And now bring your hands together, palms together, please, with your fingers pointing out, and rub them together like we're starting that fire. And now float your hand to that place. And if your body said no, just imagine your hand is there. And now in this place, simply notice how you're contacting this part of your body. Are you gripping it? Can you barely feel your hand there? See, what we did initially is you recognized where the ache or the pain or the sensation was. And now what you're doing is you're relating to it. So notice the size of this sensation, ache or pain. Is it bigger than your hand? Is it the size of a dime or a nickel? Notice the texture of this. Does it feel like steel or concrete? Does it feel mushy or something like tar? And now notice the shape. Is it jagged? Is it uniform? And now notice the dimension. Is it something that's little and flat? Is it as big as your hand but flat? Or is there a 3-dimension to it? Is it static, still, or is it moving? Is it throbbing? And if at any time your hand that's contacting this place becomes fatigued, just float it down, knowing that the intention of connection is enough to continue in the process. And now simply notice, is there a temperature in the space beneath your hand? Or is there a color? Is an image coming up? And now I'm going to invite you to listen even more deeply, because and discern if this has a message for you. And if so, what is the message? And like all good conversations, you may certainly respond back with whatever it is you want to say. And just go back and forth for the next 30 seconds in a dialogue, if you wish. Okay, and so now I'm going to invite you to take your hand down, to shake your hands out, both of them. I shook mine so hard my ring light moved. And now come back into the room. So what we're going to do with that is you've listened, you recognized, you related, and I'm curious, how many of you felt a release in where your hand was? Oh, okay. Got it. I took 2. Okay. I had a pain in my shoulder, which was very interesting to me. And it didn't go away because it had a real message about, Georgena, you're shouldering too much. And so that's my dialogue for me to go in and really listen to. So I'm curious, is there anybody that wants to share what that process was like for them? What came up? And we don't have to by any means.
I'll just say it felt nice to have my warm hand on the spot, but I didn't get any message.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting to be able to have that hand there?
Mhm.
Yeah. And see, we can do that throughout the day, but we forget, right? Thank you, Dottie. Yeah. And was there, yeah, okay. Anybody else get a message? Victoria.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't, I liked what you said about dialogue. And so I thought, well, I'm not necessarily getting anything. So I just kind of asked. So it was on my foot, which I have bunions and So it wasn't really hurting in the moment, but I just I felt like it is grateful for how I try to take care of it. And then, well, is there anything more I can do? Well, yeah, we kind of like those little toe things that you've been using. And so, whether it was just nice to engage with it, whether I was making it up or all that kind of stuff. It just, oh, okay. It was nice to give that, to honor it in that way.
Yes. And
And
that's the thing, is that, how we think we're making this up. And yet it's like, this is really curious. There was that honoring there. And so to trust, and that is the difference between the reactive self, the egoic self, the thinking self, and the responsive self. The self that is simply in the moment listening. Because I'm curious, as you were doing this, were you feeling any fear or worry or doubting yourself?
well, I guess just, is this me making it up? But I think I'm more and more, well, what is even making it up? And so,
Yeah.
so there's kind of doubt, but it's less, I think, and it's just being open and just, well, whatever, this is a nice experience in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a nice experience in the moment.
Yes. And it brings you into that experience in the moment. And it was very interesting because before we started this, we had relaxation, we had calm, and peaceful. Okay. Those were the words that you were experiencing. As a result of this experience, has that energy, that vibration shifted, or has it deepened or stayed about the same? I'm curious. Dottie?
Probably about the same.
Yeah, but it didn't go away.
No,
Okay.
no.
Claire, what about you?
The issue that came up, it's chronic. So I have a story that it's going to stay. And I know I have that story. So there's a bit of resignation in it, and yet patience to have it disappear. And why hasn't it disappeared? So all of that plays.
And it's very interesting. This last week, it was astounding. I was working with a corporate client online in their 40s with an anger issue. So we did the empty chair because that person wanted their anger to go away. They wanted to stop blowing up and that was their reactive pattern. And what happened is when they heard the message from anger as to why it was there and what it was informing this person with, the dialogue began, and the anger felt like it had given the person the message, and it said, I can go now. I don't have to be the first thing that happens. And so with these things that hang on and hang on and hang on, I've got a colleague who's a synergist who has a pain in her hip that's gone on and on and on. Oh my goodness, we've done so many sessions and we've learned so much about this hip, and yet the condition is the same. So I offer that to you simply to say there's a richness there as we go back to it over and over again. And it's one of those things that you just really would like to go away. I truly got it. And it's like, and then that's where the Holmes thing comes in. Is this happening to me, or is this happening for me? Or every time this gets my attention, is it a call for care? And there's a whole bunch of other things that it could be. So let's continue.
So Georgena,
Yes.
Kana has a note in the chat that she had something she'd like to share, even though it wasn't exactly what you're.
Oh, good. Okay. Kana, do you want to talk?
I'm happy to do that. I just put it there for people to see. But anyway, it was about the energy ball that you were making. And at the beginning of the meditation where we made the energy ball, I was in Sedona a few years ago and had been walking by a place where some people had earlier been doing an energy circle. And as we were leaving, it looked like some people were kind of gathering again. So I grabbed my friends. I said, "Oh, they're getting ready to do an energy circle. Let's join." And so there were a few of us there. And so we circled around and more people came and more people came. And I looked at the people who were there initially. And we were kind of looking at each other. And I said, "Are you going to lead?" And they go, "We don't know what to do. Why don't you do it?" And I've never led any kind of thing like that. And being a very extreme introvert, I just thought, what the heck? I've been to enough of these things that I can talk my way through it. So I did, and we, did the energy ball and did a whole bunch of stuff, and it was very nice. And as we were leaving the circle, my nose started bleeding, which is very unusual. And I just kind of blew it off. It's the desert and that's just dry air. We got to the car and I pulled my phone out and my phone was dead. We got to the hotel and I pulled my iPad out and my iPad died. Both of the chips, both of the cards in my phone and my iPad died after I touched it after that energy circle.
Wow.
So that's just the story.
Oh, amazing.
An experience, really an experience.
Yeah, it was very surprising.
Mm-hmm. And as I listen to the bloody nose, I'm really curious about what the metaphor of that would be. Plain as the nose on your face, don't stick your nose in things. But a bloody nose?
Right?
What's that about? Did you ever figure that out or investigate that?
No, it was just very unusual. I just chalked it up to just the energy of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
It was just my body reacting to the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd not had a bloody nose since then. And I couldn't tell you the decade I had one prior to that. So it was a rare occurrence.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So reaction or response? Who
Right.
knows?
Who
But
knows?
it was something. Yeah,
Okay.
it was something.
All right,
Oh,
thanks
thank
for
you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And thanks, Dottie, for that catch. I appreciate it. So, as I said, this process that I just took you through it's a real core of Rubenfeld synergy, and I'm now teaching it in the somatic grief relief certification program that I'm doing with therapists and also with nurses and coaches, because we are a world awash in grief. And I had a client recently say, "Well, what is grief?" And my definition of grief is the internal state of deep, dark, anguished feelings, thoughts, and beliefs. Listen again. Deep, dark, anguished feelings, thoughts, and beliefs that live in the body and are as the natural consequence of loss. So years ago, the 4 R's came through as a way to support grieving people, and I simply want to share those with you right now. Rest your body, relax your mind, which regulates your emotions, and realign as the truth of your being. And so now what I'm going to invite you to do is come with me to that place of reaction. We've been in the place of response. We've been in the place of stability and centering and noetic experiences. And I'm going to invite you now to bring to mind a person, a place, or an event that activated a fear-based reaction in you. And just notice now, as you close your eyes or cast them down, remember you're safe in this room. What are you seeing? Might be a fight you were having with somebody. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What happens? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? So now come back into the room. Are you breathing? Did you leave your body? Since the chat's not working, I had said, please type in the chat the activator. Was it a person? Was it a place, an event? And what you saw and heard and felt. So if one or two of you would share, that would be wonderful. And if you don't want to, I totally understand. I'll share.
Well, I can share.
Thank you, Claire.
And it's funny what popped into my mind. I wasn't expecting this, but it was a couple of years ago, and I was driving from Gresham on Airport Way back here, and there were all these pickup trucks with political flags in them. And they were chasing motorists and cornering people on the road and menacing drivers. And I went right into so much fear. I just didn't know what to do. And I just felt trapped.
So what happened?
I eventually, traffic moved and I was able to go, but I immediately called a friend to say, here's what happened. I have to share this. I have to process this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just was so unexpectedly out of anything I was ever expecting.
Yeah, here you are, innocently driving home,
Yes,
and all of a sudden, this happens. And
yes.
so it stopped you.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing is that they were the ones that were wanting to fight. You did the freeze because you couldn't flight.
Right.
You were stuck by that. Mhm.
Yes.
And so that is amazing, because the reaction evokes for many of us a trauma response.
Right.
And, the American Psychological Association says trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. That was a terrible event for you.
Mhm.
Yeah. And immediately after the event, the shock and denial are typical. Well, for you, it was like, I got to, have this witnessed by somebody. And I'm curious for you. I'll go on and I'll just say longer term reactions, they say, include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. And I'm curious, after you were witnessed by your friend, what happened? Was that enough, or did this linger with you?
Well, it gets re-triggered every time I see one of those trucks.
Wow.
Not to the extent that it was initially, but I see them and immediately go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's re-traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my every thought by any means, but certainly not my favorite experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing is that it brings caution.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So you go and what I'm curious about is, as a result of being cautious, have you ever been stopped in traffic like that before? Again?
No.
Yeah.
No.
There's some way that, yes, it's traumatizing. Yes, it brings you into a place of this, and yet you have now a way to move through it that you didn't have before. Did I get it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. You know, on a practical note, I only see one truck at a time, so it's not nearly as menacing as it was that day.
Mhm.
But it always raises my hackles.
Yes.
And I think, I don't want to drive near that person.
Mhm.
Could be the nicest person in the world, but I don't want to drive near them.
Because they're in a pickup
Well,
and
with
they've got the flag.
they've got the flag. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Pickups are fine.
The
It's-
pickup is fine, but it's the flag. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I had said in here, you know, many of you have heard and experienced fight or flight. It's part of American history. And it seems like that is the truth. And then what about freeze? And it was interesting because in his book, Waking the Tiger, Peter Levine talks about the rabbit that is white because it's in the snow and it knows the coyote is coming, and so it freezes. And then after the coyote is gone and it knows it's going to be safe, it just shakes and shakes and shakes and shakes. And that's what I had an experience like that. It wasn't anything like the menacing of yours. I was driving my son's old car because he needed mine. And so as I was going to the dentist, it was way early in the morning, and the car was filled with gas and everything was fine. But as I was going up one of the bridges, it jerked, it stopped for an instant. And I put my foot down on the gas pedal and it didn't go. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Oh, I'm going to ruin traffic for people this morning. So I went immediately into a reaction. And it was so interesting because I went to yoga that night and I was in hot yoga. And one of the things we had to do was stand on one leg, bring the other leg up, and then stretch it out and hold it. In those days, I could do that. But what happened is my foot started going like this. And it did that the whole minute of that sequence on that foot. And then I put it down. When I brought it up for the second sequence, which was only 30 seconds, it started shaking and then it stopped. So I knew the trauma was out of it. So that was my experience. So, you know, wow, wow, wow. Well, and I want to give you a tool now that was developed. It just came one morning during the pandemic, and it's called SSE. It's 3 simple questions. The first one is, what state am I in? And so it's what physical state, what emotional state, what cognitive state, what spiritual state. And I use this tool. When I would wake up first thing in the morning to get a sense of what was happening. How old do I feel? And what would I like to have happen? So for you, Claire, it's what state am I in? I'm in that state of fear triggered by seeing this. How old do you feel? And you don't have to answer that in the group, but you know, that can give you information. And then what would I like to have happen? Get home safely, be allowed to drive. Okay. The SSE is really great when we're in the middle of a traumatic event and can remember it. And that's why it's great to practice it, because then when you need it, it's there. But again, what state am I in? How old do I feel? And what would I like to have happen? Mark Nepo talks about the reactions that what we just talked about, the fight, the flight, the freeze, or I didn't talk about fawn. And fawn is when we avoid speaking the truth in a reactive traumatic situation because we fear it might make things worse. And that's a new term to me. But he talks about these reactions may be anchored as a sense of patterns that we adopted long ago to stay safe. He writes in his book, The Book of Awakening. I'm sure many of you have that book. And the title of the writing for that day is Reflex or Response. And he writes, I did not survive to be untouched. The emotional patterns of our lives are very strong. They often come into being because we've needed them to survive. But sooner or later, we all arrive at moments where the very thing that has saved us is killing us and keeping us from truly living. Being invisible once kept us from being hurt, but now we feel like we're vanishing and no one is seeing us. Or listening was once kept us in relation, but now we're drowning in our own unheard cries. Or avoiding conflict once kept us out of the line of fire, but now we're thirsting for contact that is real. And one of the patterns that I developed in my life, two actually, were pleasing and perfection. And my mother was a gorgeous woman who kept a perfect home. And being a nurse, you could eat off the garage floor. However, as a way of keeping that, what I really learned is her perfectionism was a sense of control to keep her safe. She'd been raised in the Dust Bowl. She was a menopause baby. Her older sister was 11 years older. She had a little brother that came along. Mother was born in 1922. And holy moly, it was the 30s. She was 8 years old and the dust would blow in. And Mother talked about taking, a spatula and a dustpan and getting the dust off the furniture. And so perfection was very, very important. Beauty was very important to my mother. And so everything had to be really nice. Well, as a little girl, I just didn't buy into that. And as a result of that, I got sent back 3 and 4 times to clean the bathroom because I missed this and I missed that. Well, in those days, it certainly wasn't a response. It was a reaction. I felt shame and I felt less than. And the thing I wanted to do more than anything in the world was please my mother so that she would be happy. So when my boys came along, I decided to do something different. Yes, it was important to me to have a home that was beautiful. And it was important for me to have my sons learn to be very independent by the time they were in 8th grade. And I chose 8th grade because I knew by then they'd be off doing sports and stuff like that. So what we did is we went into the messy bathroom and we pointed out all the things that were messy in the bathroom. And then we set about changing those. And then we'd look again and say, oh, did we miss anything? But we were in that place instead of reaction of you're not good enough, you're not seeing it. We were in that place of response as it became curious and playful. So when my son Reed died, he was in 9th grade, I couldn't keep up the pleaser and the perfectionist. I was a crumbled mess. And so, as I say, we have to navigate the ocean of emotion, and grief brings up the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves, longing to be heard and healed. And my pleaser self and my perfectionist self said, hey, we can't do this anymore. This is not useful to you. And so those patterns in my life went away. And I was very, very grateful for that. So tonight, how are we going to react in fear or respond in wonder? Well, one of the things is we can ask the question, why is this happening to me? Claire, I wasn't there that day. I'm really thankful I wasn't. Gosh, is this happening to me? Is this happening for me? What do I need to learn from this? And I'm curious if you thought about those questions at all.
Yes, yes, I have. And in retrospect, I could, in the moment, I could do nothing but be in the fear. I could do nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you gotten some insights then as a result?
Well, yes, it's compassion. It's about
Yes.
compassion, and
Yeah.
it's about trust that I am safe.
Mhm.
So, and other things as well.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, is always under everything. When we go down and we go down and we go down, we can find the anger, we can find the guilt, we can find the shame, we can find the fear. It's there. And it was really interesting last Saturday morning. I was in a retreat for the spiritual practitioners, and we had had the event in Israel. And I got a text from someone because Paul Selig says, hey, we're all in this together. We're all in this agreement of the consciousness that war is something that's a fact of life. And it was like, it's over there. I'm so thankful I'm here. I'm so thankful I'm safe. But I was still feeling, like you, Dottie, the grief and the trauma of it all. And what came to me to do my particular work was a reading from a friend in a newsletter from a friend in England. And she said, who is your inner terrorist? Who is your inner oppressor? And so I sat with that and really worked with that, because I was being very critical about myself putting this program together for you. And it was very interesting because it was like, how do we do this in such a short time? There's so much under it, and it needs to be interactive, and IONS isn't interactive. And my inner oppressor was really very, very busy with the whole thing. So in this moment, we ask, and I go back to Ernest Holmes, the world that seems so foul or so exquisite becomes to you what you become to it. And in this time, what is it we see? We see a world of compassion, and that comes from a place of response rather than a world of judgment, a place of reaction. And Holmes will say, in every situation that we're in, what is being reflected. And as you shared so vulnerably and graciously, and I'm grateful to you, Claire, what was being reflected was those people's hatred, those people's power over all of that, that was so scary. And so for me, it's like, okay, yes, I could respond with compassion as long as I keep myself safe. That's got to be the response.
So Georgena, Tana had a question out here in the chat. She wanted to know what's the importance of the question, how old do I feel?
Oh, I love it. I'm so thankful. Thanks for seeing that. How old do I feel? takes you into the awareness of, is this pattern, this state that you're in, something that is happened when you were little, a teenager, an adult, a 20-something. I was very different in my 20s than I was in my 40s, looking at the world and being in relationship to myself. So that's what the importance of the question is. And very often, this last 6 weeks, I've been awakening in anxiety. And I don't know if it was ramping up to what was coming. So when I would wake up, Georgena, it would be, what state am I in? Anxiety. How old do I feel? It was my age. And then I asked the question, is this mine? And then what would you like to have happen? And for me, it was, I needed to get up and I needed to move after I asked the anxiety if it had a message for me. And I usually found that the anxiety was simply just, you're safe, be calm, know that you're in the moment. Goes back to what you experienced in Egypt, Dottie. I had to remind myself that whatever was happening out here, I was okay. So thank you very much for that question. And I'm seeing that it's 8:45, and I wanted to share with you another tool for forgiveness work. And I use this many times with myself because I tend to be very self-critical. And when the thought comes back, I say, I recognize this thought has come back. I forgive this thought for coming back, and I release this thought to love. And this tool is really good anytime you ruminate, anytime you've been in a reactive mode and you wish you would have done it differently, and you're playing it over and over in your head, and hopefully everybody on this call has outgrown that. I'm finding it happens to me less and less, but there are things from my past that I will still, that'll just come up out of nowhere. I wish they wouldn't, but they do. So I recognize this event with this person. I forgive this event, this memory for coming back, and I release this memory to love. And Ernest Holmes goes on to say, be still and give thyself to silence, to inner listening. Surrender. Surrender your grief. Surrender your anxiety. Surrender your despair. No door can be unlocked by self-inflicted pain nor bleak despair. So one thing I would invite you to do with me is this last tool, sound as medicine. And so I'm going to invite you. The sound of M is very, very powerful. So I'm going to invite you to exhale with me on the count of 3, and then breathe in and make the M sound, and just notice how far it goes in your body. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Why don't we unmute so we can hear everybody doing it?
Okay, sounds perfect, Dottie.
We can hear all the M's.
Okay, that's good, because that's good. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Ooh, we've got some great lungs here. Okay, did anybody get down to your stomach with your M?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. Let's do it one more time and see if we can get down to our toes. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Breathe in deeply. And now the Okay. And that sound brings you into alignment as that divine being within, as does from the Book of Realization, I know who I am. I am realized as the true self I am. So anytime you want to get in touch with that, you begin with I am. And I've been teaching people to look in the mirror and as they're washing their hands and just saying, I am whatever is true for you in that moment. I know what I am in truth, in the manifestation in form as the true self I am. And I know how I serve in truth as an expressed octave of source. I know myself in divine will. The divine self claims me in its own expression for the betterment of all. So we've got time for questions. We've got time for comments. We've got time for, well, Georgena, I was expecting you to do this and you didn't. So let's have time for that.
Well, so Georgina, when you were saying you were, let's see, you were aware of your inner terrorist and oppressor when you were preparing this program.
Mhm.
So talk about how you dealt with that, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, I will, because what I did is I used that I recognize your back, saying this is not going to be good enough.
Mm.
I forgive you for coming back because this is an old pattern, and I release you to love. And then I sat down on the couch with my phone and I put the phone on stopwatch and I closed my eyes and I felt my feet on the floor and I got into my body and I said to Spirit, now what? What do you want me to know now?
Mm.
What is this program going to look like now? Because I don't want to overwhelm people and have them feel like they're drinking out of a fire hose. And yet there's a lot to this. So that's how I did it, Victoria.
And you just, and so repeat, I mean, did that work to?
Yes, it did. So I started typing this little talk, this script, and whenever I would get into that place of, oh, it's not good enough, or it's too much, or this is too confusing, I forgive you. I recognize you, I forgive you, I release you, and then I go to the couch, because that's the place I like to be, and ask, now what? What do I need to know now for the talk? What needs to stay? What needs to go?
And then you would do, and then something would come and you would just.
Yeah, and sometimes I was only there for 3 minutes. Sometimes I was there for 10. And it was an opportunity too, Victoria, to just slow down and be instead of the doing. And that's my intention in this world now, is to do. Instead of being the do, it's do, be, and get to more of a balance. So is that helpful?
Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can always have a cup of coffee and talk more.
Right.
So why do you use the stopwatch? Or
Just because I'm curious.
Hmm.
I'm curious is to how long it is until an answer comes.
Hmm.
And I'm just curious. I don't want to set 3 minutes for myself. It might be longer. It might be 1 minute and 27 seconds, which it has been. And so I just am curious. That's all. That's why.
Okay.
Yeah. Brings me into that present moment. Kana, do you have anything, any questions or comments?
Nope, I'm good with this.
Okay.
Thanks for
good.
asking.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Dottie, shall we unstring the beads with what I'm leaving with?
Sure. Yeah. Let me just ask Nancy, who's on the iPhone and can't
Yes.
speak through it. If she has any questions, to just type them in the chat and I'll repeat them for her.
Yes.
And in the meantime, we can start unstringing the beads if you like.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with Kana, who's the next person over from me on the little.
Yeah, Kana here, and I really love this, and can't say that I saw anything that I hadn't ever seen before, but it was wonderful reinforcement of some practices that I probably should reintroduce into my life. And I really thank you guys for all of this. That's it.
We're
Thanks.
glad you came. Yeah. So what are you leaving with? I'm so curious. Yeah.
Are you still asking me?
No. You
Okay.
shared.
Oh.
Okay.
Claire, do you want to be next?
I very much appreciate this, and thank you, Georgina. And what I most appreciate is what a lovely, intimate group this is. It was just the perfect people for exactly the conversation that we had.
Yeah. Thank you, Claire. Victoria?
Well, I appreciate your consistent presence, Georgina. Just a quiet competence and care. And yeah, it was a beautiful experience. And I think the thing that I'm taking is from when you ask us to dialogue with that place that we put hands on, that my usual question when I'm opening it up for a dialogue or opening up, for something to come through is, well, is this real? Am I making this up? And I want to change that. I want to stop. That is not a useful question. I really saw that tonight. It is just not. More, how am I feeling in this present moment? Am I feeling happy and peaceful? And so that's a helpful shift for me to make. And I really appreciated, because I've just been going through that agony with this course, because I change it every time I teach it. It's like, all those things. It's not good enough. It's all this. And so it was just good to hear how you go through, how you help yourself with that. Oh, thank you. And yes, I loved our group too. So I appreciate you mentioning that, Claire.
Thank you. Darlene?
A lot of the stuff that you introduced, I had not been exposed to. And so that was nice. It gives me food for thought and challenge myself to consider some of these practices in my own life. And so I guess I'm coming away with that. So thank you, Georgina, Dottie, ladies. It's been fun.
So glad you came.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Yes.
Yeah.
Nancy said she doesn't have anything to share. So I guess what I would say is thank you so much. I guess what I'm leaving with is the forgiveness tool. This I forgive myself for the thought, because I have these negative thoughts about myself from time to time, or what's going on, or, and so I appreciated that. And the M thing is going to be fun. You could drive down the road going M.
You can.
So
Absolutely.
thank you, Georgena. It was really delightful and informative and inspirational, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm leaving with great gratitude for the vulnerability, for the level of depth of sharing, for each of your presence. And so grateful that this was a delightful experience for me. And I stayed in my body the whole time. So thank you. We'll see you next month. Okay.
Yes, and thank you all for
Thank
coming. I
you.
really appreciate it. It's great to see you all. We'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you, Dottie. Thank you, Jen.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.